The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Well, as usual, Tuesdays mean John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. He'll join us in hour number 2, and we've got a lot to get to on the program. What is most surprising? Is it Dylan Samson or Tennessee's elite defense? Also, we're going to get into here very shortly Nico Iamaleava and how he stacks up against the rest of the quarterbacks that he will face the remainder of this season, and why I actually believe Tennessee, and I said this in the preseason, and I've been made fun of it for saying so, by a certain couple of television show hosts, but I'm sticking by it. I said to begin the season that Tennessee, when they played Georgia, would have a quarterback advantage, and I feel stronger about that than ever before. Can the Vols win it all the way they've been playing? Great defense, average offense. Also, basketball wins against Gardner-Webb, the college football playoff rankings. Will they be biased against the Vols? We'll discuss that. The wide receiver core, a problem for Tennessee. It certainly appears to be that way. And we will get into a more pleasant surprise, as I mentioned, Dylan Samson or the defense. And Tuesdays also mean Football IQ. It'll be the last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Caleb, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm well. So what do you think about my initial statement? And we'll get into it here in just a second. But I levied it before the season began, and I thought that Nico would be as good or better than Carson Beck. Just on face value, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I actually think you have a great point, and you're looking right. But you're not looking right because, like, Nico Iamaleava took a giant step forward beyond what we projected. You're looking right because Carson Beck is significantly worse than a lot of people thought he'd be. So I guess in what is it in Vegas terms where they use the term backdoor cover? I guess you're backdoor right on this.
I'll take a backdoor right, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're like, I think, OnlyFans that have those entire channels. So go ahead and click in the like. Go ahead and click in the like and subscribe button. We want to hear from you. It is time for What the H, which means Caleb's not completely ready to get on board, as What the H is brought to you by our good friends at Medicare Misty.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, Caleb. What the H? Some people say to Dave Hooker, Nico Iamaleava will be better than the rest of the quarterbacks the Vols face in their upcoming opponents. Now, I think we can both agree that he will be better than whatever UTEP and Mississippi State serve up. We knew that at the beginning of the year, even if Nico was a disappointment. I don't think he's been a disappointment at any times this year. I just think he's been a redshirt freshman. Now, Carson Beck's a senior. Carson Beck is a player who has started about 15 more games and played in about 3 more seasons than Nico Iamaleava. Therefore, you would naturally assume he's better. And we'll get to out of respect, and all respect is due to this man, Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt. But let's start with Carson Beck. I believe firmly that the Vols will have a quarterback at least equality, but I will say a potential advantage because I think Nico is the more talented of the two players, and I think Carson Beck has regressed. And this is why I love spending a good part of my day reading your comments on YouTube. So please put those up as often as you can because I do read them. And when they're really compelling, I respond. If they're making fun of the bags under my eyes or Caleb's hair, then I try not to respond because that just drives the algorithm and gets more responses. Your hair looks fantastic, Caleb. The bags under my eyes, not so great. It's called getting old. But
does my hair look sexy? Push it back.
Somebody brought up this point. Carson Beck just doesn't look the same without Brock Bowers. Now, I know we're talking about a tight end, but Tennessee has not looked the same offensively since being without Caleb.
Jalen Hyatt, Cedric
Jalen Hyatt. So is there something to that in a way different approach? The two do work the middle of the field. And I think that's almost like shooting. I think great shooters have an innate ability. The Ray Allens of the world, the Reggie Millers of the world. I think you can get slightly better at shooting. I don't think you can get great. I think there's something to be said for having a feel for working the middle of the field. So I would say that without Brock Bowers, that could be the reason. Now, you brought up yesterday, he just puts the ball in harm's way too often, and I'm with you on that. But perhaps some of that's because he doesn't have a safety valve in Brock Bowers, who you and I would agree is one of the best tight ends that has played during our lifetime. Caleb, what do you make of Carson Beck's regression? And what do you make of my assertion that Nico Iamaleava could actually be better in the Georgia game than Carson Beck, who a lot of people think is going to go in the top 5 first picks of the NFL draft?
I agree with you. And I'm going to add a little bit more to this. If you remember, Dave, last year, it wasn't just Brock Bowers they lost. They lost Ladd McConkey, who, by the way, is playing great at receiver right now with the Chargers in the NFL. And both of them were hurt in November. You don't think that had something to do with them losing to Alabama in the SEC championship game? Now, I know Carson Beck's stat line was technically good. He completed 72% of his passes for like 243 yards. And he didn't throw an interception, but he didn't have any touchdown passes. So yeah, I think that's been a big issue. I got two philosophies on this. Not just that Nico, I think, is better. I think Nico has better coaching. I think Mike Bobo is not a good offensive coordinator. I've been sticking by that for a long time now, and I know a lot of people disagree with me on that. They'll say that Mike Bobo, didn't they say he developed Aaron Murray, Dave, or not Aaron Murray, Matthew Stafford? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not buying that. I think Matthew Stafford just had some raw talent, and that you and I could have coached him into an NFL draft pick.
Oh, yeah, and then he practically had to be recoached in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's be honest with you. Things didn't work out for the Lions, and he had to go get recoached by an offensive guru and Sean McVay to win a championship. And that's happened before with Tennessee players. I told you the story about Jabari Greer. He showed up at the Buffalo Bills, and they said, take a year off, forget everything you've been taught in college.
Right.
So whether it's Bowers or whether it's coaching, you would think Tennessee would have the advantage in both of those as a better offensive coach than what Georgia has now. I like Tennessee's tight ends a lot. They don't have Brock Bowers. So maybe in a roundabout way that furthers my point, Caleb.
There's another layer to this.
Give me the other layer.
Leadership. I think, and I mean this in a serious way, guys. You watch this all the time in the NFL. You see players play harder for some quarterbacks than others. I'll give you an example. You're a Cowboy fan, Dave, actually. I actually still maintain that I think Tony Romo had a better arm than Troy Aikman. But I will give you, I think Troy Aikman was a better leader. So I think many players played harder for Troy Aikman than they did Tony Romo. And
there were two different times. It was about throwing over the top when Troy threw it. We don't know if Troy could have thrown it with different arm angles and all of that. That wasn't a thing until around about when Tony Romo came on. But anyway.
Okay. The other level of this is so everybody talks about how Aaron Rodgers receivers never really step up for him in the playoffs the way Tom Brady's did. That's certainly true, but I think Tom Brady had the type of leadership qualities that made players want to step up for him in the playoffs. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers has that. A great example of this is the Super Bowl between Peyton Manning and Cam Newton. Dave, you know Peyton Manning was on one leg in that Super Bowl, basically. He was a shell of himself. Cam Newton was the better quarterback. He was the MVP of that year. Didn't it feel like Denver's players really wanted to win Peyton Manning that Super Bowl a lot more than Carolina's players wanted to win Cam Newton that Super Bowl?
Yeah, no, I'll give you that. And I think leadership is a big part of it. And I think Nico has that. And from what I've been told, has been starting to display that recently by going to guys that have made mistakes and kind of cheering them up. Well, previously, who did that for Nico just a couple of weeks ago? It was Cooper Mays. So I don't think that you can go out there and say, hey, I am going to have my great leadership skills on display after I play poorly on Saturday. I think you have to play well. So now that Nico has played well and he's gotten a couple of clutch wins, and what he did in the second half of the Alabama game was huge and had to win over a lot of people on that football team, there's no question that Nico's a better leader. I said this yesterday, but I'll repeat it. I know what Carson Beck drives. It's a Lambo, and that's fine. I love fast cars. If I had the option of spending way too much money at 21, 22 years old, it would probably be on a fast car. And I'd probably not be here doing the show with Caleb because I would have killed myself. But you don't see Nico taking pictures of his fast car. And cars, plural, and I know what they are. I know where he bought them, and there's no point in me sharing it. That's not my point. But with Nico too, what did he do with the Beats by Dre thing? Have you noticed that every single player, I mean the backup long snapper, gets off of that team bus and has Beats by Dre over his ears? Everybody got a piece of that, Caleb, and he didn't have to do that.
No, he didn't. That's a great point. And this is, I mean, we joke about this all the time. It's the really wealthy ones don't flash their wealth. Like the joke, the great leaders, the great multimillionaires in sports don't flash it like the way the lesser ones do. So for Carson Beck to flash his Lambo was a little bit odd. I mean, I'll just say like Michael Jordan and LeBron are two of the richest people of all time. I don't think I ever saw them flash their wealth in front of a bunch of other teammates ever. And
thank you. And yeah, we're talking about, I mean, if we're talking about 100 Beats by Dre that are $160, we're talking about what? That would be $16,000?
$16,000 maybe, yeah.
Okay, so Nico is not money grubbing, but he could have done this if he wanted to. He could have said, as opposed to all those Beats by Dre for my teammates, I think I'd just rather have that cash. I'll tell you somebody that did do that I think we're all fans of. At least we were at the time. Bruce Pearl, when things were going down in flames, essentially had no leverage to get his buyout. And they said, here is the number you can get. How do you want to divvy this up among your assistant coaches? And it was far less than his buyout was going to be and didn't include any buyouts for his assistant coaches. And his answer was, I'll take it.
Sounds like a Bruce Pearl move. Sounds like a Bruce Pearl move. I mean,
I know somebody that was in the meeting and he goes, all right, I'm glad we negotiated that. I'll take it.
Let's, so just for a heads up, the other quarterbacks that Nico is going to play, by the way, is going to be Skylar Locklear for UTEP or Cade McDonald. Neither of them is good. Nico's better than them. That's on UTEP. On Mississippi State, he's going to play Michael Van Buren Jr., not Martin Van Buren, the president who succeeded Andrew Jackson in 1840.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes. I assume he's better than both of those. Let's throw out Diego Pavia, though, Dave. I mean, we're talking about a quarterback who single-handedly has put Vanderbilt in the top 25 by himself.
Absolutely. And and he's a better, tougher runner, and I don't want to dismiss him at all. And as a matter of fact, Diego Pavia is pull up. I hate it when they do yards per game. It's so silly. He's the third highest rated quarterback behind Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe in the SEC. at 151.8. Nico is 144.6. Those are pretty close, pretty negligible. But as you pointed out yesterday, with the competition that Nico has played, you could make an argument that Diego Pavia is more of an MVP to his team, and you could argue a better player.
He also leads his team in rushing with 563 yards on the ground.
True. Okay, so there are two different arguments to be had. I will say that from a talent perspective, that's going to shine through, and Nico's going to be a higher rated draft pick. But if you want to say who's having the better season this year, Diego Pavia, and given the fact that Tennessee's receivers haven't really stepped up for the Vols, which we're going to discuss with John Adams later, then I don't think there's any question you could make a strong argument for Diego Pavia, maybe more so than Carson Beck, because, guys, Georgia and Tennessee are closer than they may ever be in the way they're approaching the game. Caleb, they both have what? Very good defenses and so-so offenses. Yep. And right now, Nico's not turning the ball over, but Carson Beck is. Get your thoughts on that. What the H, brought to you by Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. Well, I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
All right, Caleb, what do you take on that? That Nico is far more talented, but if somebody wants to argue Diego Pavia has been a bigger impact for his team, I can't argue that.
All right, going to this point, if Nico keeps up the way he played last game, I test alone, I can't say that Diego Pavia is better than Nico Iamaleava. I think if Nico plays,
or even last 6 quarters.
Yeah, the last 6 quarters. I think Nico, the last 6 quarters, is better than Diego Pavia. Now, Nico, as the conglomerate of the whole season, Diego's probably better. But the way the corner that Nico has turned since the second half of Alabama, that Nico turned corner is better than Diego Pavia. And as somebody brought up, like, Diego Pavia puts up a lot of stats, but it ain't like Vanderbilt's like blowing people out of the building with their offense, guys. I mean, they're dropping 20 to 24 points a game maybe to win. So I think that by the end of the year, I do think Nico will be better than Diego Pavia. And Dave, then we get to something a little bit deeper on this because, Tennessee might go to Atlanta. I don't really care if they go to Atlanta, and I don't think Tennessee should care if they go to Atlanta. They shouldn't want to go to Atlanta, but they might. Then he'll start facing maybe, could he face a Connor Wagman at Texas A&M? Could he get a rematch with Carson Beck at Georgia? Could he still be the best quarterback that he's going to face the rest of the year? What happens with his college football playoff opponents? What if he gets a group of 5 draw in the first round? What if he then goes to play, BYU in the second round? I mean, are we talking about the possibility, Dave, that Nico is better than every quarterback he's going to face on the remainder of the schedule, including the postseason?
Okay, well, that depends. And it reminds me of looking at our YouTube analytics, okay? Because there are moments where they spike, and that's what he's done over the past 6 quarters, right? He spiked. Yep. But really, it's been a gradual trend up. So if it's a gradual trend up and not we've seen the arrival of Nico and or he considers to spike in the regard that he has, then no, I think he'll face a Quinn Ewers or someone else that's a better quarterback. But I still think Jackson Dart is probably the best quarterback in the SEC. If they face Jackson Dart in some way, which I don't think is going to happen, I don't think Ole Miss is going to make the playoff, and I think they would keep SEC teams away as much as they could. But I will tell you this. I think that would be the one quarterback that would stand out in my mind. And then you would have to include, Dylan Gabriel. What other quarterbacks would you include that even if Nico continues to trend upwards, he's not going to reach them? Or are there any?
The obvious one is Cam Ward at Miami, who is the runaway Heisman favorite at this point. I mean, he's having a Cam Newton type season at Miami. I don't even think there's any question. He might play himself into a top 5 draft pick because of the way he's played. So there's Cam Ward. After Cam Ward, we're probably talking about, you're right, Dillon Gabriel, who was a late bloomer. I'm not even going to give anybody Quinn Ewers because you just don't know if he's healthy this year. So Dillon Gabriel, Cam Ward, maybe Will Howard. We just watched Nico go against Jalen Milroe, and I mean, Nico played better than Jalen Milroe in that game by any reasonable definition of playing well. You know, if LSU can find their way into the playoff, Garrett Nussmeier may be on that level, like you talked about with Jackson Dart. But the only clear-cut ones, I mean, unless Tennessee faces Oregon, Ohio State, or Miami, I can't out and out say that Nico won't be the best quarterback on the field. And I get that Curtis Rourke for Indiana has insanely good stats too, but Indiana played a game without Curtis Rourke and still won in dominating fashion with Taven Jackson, former Vol quarterback. And Indiana hasn't played anybody. They played the worst schedule in human history for a Power 5 school.
Okay, so my Twitter tease may have been off a little bit. I said, can Nico be top 5 quarterback by the end of the year? Top 5 nationally? Am I underselling it?
I think there are really good quarterbacks of teams that I don't think will end up in the playoff, and that's what's hurting Nico. So Cam Ward's going to end up in the playoff. That's in Nico's way. Dillon Gabriel's probably ahead of Nico right now. Jackson Dart's probably ahead of Nico. So Cam Ward, Dillon Gabriel in the playoff. Outside of the playoff, I think Jackson Dart's not going to make the playoff, and you said you have him over Nico. Shedeur Sanders isn't going to make the playoff. As of right now, Shedeur Sanders is a better quarterback than Nico. I just don't think we can debate that. And
I would agree with that.
So
I have no problem agreeing with that. And he's the only one. See, I give Jackson Dart the advantage over Nico because he's got a little bit more time under his belt. But Shedeur Sanders is the only one that's playing college football right now that I truly believe has more talent than Nico from top to bottom. Nico, by the way, is ranked 64th in – blaming it got me on that yards per game again. My apologies. Shedeur Sanders, for the record, is number 10 in passing rating. Jackson Dart is number 1. Cam Ward is number 5. Will Howard of Ohio State is number 3. Now let me get to Diego Pavia's number 26, who we mentioned. Nico Iamaleava is 38. So we're not saying that at the end of the year that Nico is going to be considered one of the top quarterbacks in the nation based off his cumulative work, but I think he could be in the top 5. I don't think that's a reach whatsoever, Caleb.
No, I mean, yeah, I think so too. I think by the end of the year, you can definitely see that.
Yep.
In this
Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. PeakIVHydration.com. Today's tough question is now.
Today's tough question. Take a side.
Take a stand.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right. Here is today's tough question. And it's pretty simple. Can the Vols win it all with the way they've been playing? Great defense, average offense. Caleb will put that on the poll question, but first, let me get the initial answer from you. What say you, sir?
I'm going to say yes, they can. But I don't think it will be necessary for them because I don't think the offense will stay so-so the rest of the year. But let's just assume it does. I think this year there is a level of mediocrity among offensive players that I don't think we've seen in a long time. Is that fair to say, Dave? I mean, we just went down. We had to scratch this. I mean, we had to like dive to find quarterbacks that might actually be better than Nico when Nico's played relatively mediocre this year. And that's not a shock. I think once you hit December, I think defense really travels. And I think this year it's going to matter more than ever because here's the truth, Dave. The college football playoff is 3 to 4 games that's going to coincide with finals, Christmas break, all these things that get into that distract college kids that you would agree don't distract NFL kids, right?
Yes. They're going to class.
When there's distractions, is that more of a detriment to offense or defense? I think it's way more of a detriment to offense, right?
I think that maybe you're overcomplicating things just a little bit. I just believe that at the end of the day, how many great offensive teams have won it all as opposed to great defensive teams have won it all? Obviously, you have the Alabama run, and I don't care what you say, there was at least a great or elite defense that won all those championships. They may have had the offense to complement it, but at the end of the day, they had great defenses. Kirby Smart, what's he doing at Georgia? Very same thing. He's won 2 titles. So, Caleb, I just think still, even though the rules, Gary Danielson told me, have been bastardized in college football, it is still a defensive game. If you can stop people, you can't lose.
Yeah, no, and the reason that is, by the way, is because defense is more about talent than scheming. So what I mean by that, guys, if you're questioning, if you want to build a team that wins off defense, you have to have more talent than the other team. You can't win off X's and O's as a defensive-minded team. You only win off Jimmys and Joes.
I think that was very evident 2 years ago in 2022 when Tim Banks did everything he could to scheme around a lack of talent, and they still ranked 100 and something in pass defense. I mean, he did a great job given what he had, but it still wasn't enough to be at a championship level, not even close.
No, nowhere close. And that's the thing. There's the X's and O's, Jimmys and Joes argument. You can win with X's and O's on offense, but you need Jimmys and Joes on defense, period, end of story. That's why all the elite talented teams are defensive oriented, because they got the Jimmys and Joes. So I think it's more about the fact that, because everybody talks about the defensive teams, you look at the patterns, they're the ones that typically win it. I think it's actually, Dave, been more about the fact that those teams have just had more talent in general, and that's why they've been able to be defensive led. Let's be honest, Dave, if Georgia, either of those Georgia teams or if most of those Alabama teams had to win a game scoring 60 points, they could have done it. And I mean, Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa and Stetson Bennett, I mean, all those teams, Georgia did win a national title scoring 65 points. Now, yes, they held TCU to 3, but they scored 65. So it's not like they didn't have the offense to go with it. But I'll still say, in general, I think the offenses are going to be much worse this year in the college football playoff than they have been in years past. And I think that plays to Tennessee's favor because, as we've always talked about, defense does travel. Defense is more consistent. It's not like college basketball where defense doesn't win championships because eventually you're going to run into a red-hot shooting team, and it doesn't matter how good your defense is, you can't stop them. That's not how college football works.
Well, and I'll tell you, I think Tennessee's offense is going to continue to get better for a reason that Derek just pointed out. But to reset the poll question, which quarterback will give the Vols more trouble? You said our message board said Diego Pavia, 86%, Carson Beck, 13%. We would have been laughed off of YouTube. And now can Vols win a natty with okay offense and elite defense? Those votes are coming in, but so far pretty optimistic, as our friend Derek brought up a great point that I want to get to. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks & Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. All right, so Derek had this point that I wanted to get to. He mentioned Tennessee is going to benefit from Peyton Lewis in the red zone getting this playing time. It's like to see us go under 2 tight ends and run from under center with Lewis. Yes, I think Peyton Lewis is a definite power upgrade to Deshaun Bishop, and no offense against Deshaun, who was the player that got hurt before Lou Gehrig took over and didn't miss a game for like 58 years. Was it Wally Pipp? Is that who it was?
That was prior to the Yankees movie, and I already forgot it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I got a feeling that Deshaun Bishop might be that guy. Oops, you got hurt. I hate that.
You could just say Drew Bledsoe, but
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, or I could say you could say Drew Bledsoe for sure. And let's face it, there used to be this old "it's good for the team" sort of thing, and let's look out for those guys that that were great team leaders and that got hurt on the field, and you can't lose your spot to injury. Well, let's just go to Peyton for that, because Peyton Manning will tell you right there that
they're like, that is total bullshit.
He lost his position to injury because the Colts went after Andrew Luck. That's an antiquated notion that really never applied in the first place. Are you telling me that Philip Fulmer or any championship coach would say, I think Bob over there gives us the best chance to win, but Frank has been doing all the dirty laundry. He's been cleaning everything up, and he even bought muffins for us before practice the other day. So I'm going to go with Frank. Nobody's going to do that.
No, they weren't. And, if Philip Fulmer did think that way, he would have started CJ Leak over Eric Ainge and Brent Schaefer in 2004. But Dave, you covered that team. Wasn't it like the first day of fall camp and Fulmer was like, yeah, they sure are better than you. Sorry. I'm starting to.
Yeah. So
did he always have the plan to start them secretly and just waited to make the excuse, or was it because did they just look that much better than CJ Leak? To co-start Eric Ainge and Brent Schaefer? Did he always have the plan that one of those two would start over CJ Leak before they even step foot on campus, or did they just look that much better when they set foot on campus?
Oh, no, I can tell you firsthand that was always the plan, because they got the lion's share of first-team snaps. That's when practice was open. So, yeah, I mean, nowadays...
So Fulmer had never had any plans to start CJ Leak.
No,
ever.
I mean, nowadays you have to look out there and you have to think, you have to just listen to coaches and what they say to determine whether or not Milton was better than Hendon Hooker or not. And I do try to give them the benefit of the doubt. But back then, it was pretty obvious that when it got close to game time, Chris Leak was not getting any first-team snaps. CJ, or maybe 10% as opposed to 45%. And then you started to see Ainge get more. That's why when we were asked, I still remember that day. We were putting together the News Sentinel, the front page of the sports section. And I just was having lunch with somebody. I said, wouldn't it be cool if we did one side where you could do a sidebar on Casey Clausen? Eric Ainge. And you could do another side where it would be Brent Schaefer and have a picture of them right in the middle. And I remember John Adams looked to me and Griffith and said, well, who do you want? And Mike Griffith said at the time, well, I want Casey Clausen. And John goes, well, Dave came up with the idea. So, Dave, who do you want? I said, I'll take Casey Clausen. So he got to write a sidebar on Brent Schaefer.
Wait, Casey, but we're talking about...
Wait, I'm sorry, not Casey Clausen. Eric Ainge. Okay. Yeah, so I got to write the one on Eric Ainge. Sorry, I misspoke like 13 times. My apologies. Didn't sleep fantastically last night. So, all right. Go ahead and get on board. We want your thoughts. The latest poll question that is out there: can Vols win a natty with okay offense and elite defense? Right now, 80% say yes, and 20% say no. I remind you that portions of the program are brought to you by the UPS Store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, a wide range of products and services locally owned and operated. The link is right down below. Stay tuned. John Adams will join us here momentarily on the program. We will also have 4 Downs coming up, and we'll dive into a couple of other topics that I believe you would like to discuss. And that is, those basketball Vols are at it and beating Gardner-Webb this day in Tennessee sports history. Stat of the day as well. And will the college football playoff rankings be biased against the Vols? Perhaps. Stay tuned. 2 minutes off the hook sports. Represented by
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2024 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Varner Ford, built for the game.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Remind you that Hound Dogs of Knoxville champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, BanksJones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, this day in Tennessee sports history. Caleb Calhoun, what have you got for us on November the 5th, 2024?
Tennessee scored one of its ugliest wins in the history of the program against a not very good football team. But back in 1988, that was the year they started 0-6. I told you guys a couple weeks ago that they kickstarted their winning streak by beating Memphis, then Memphis State, on the road at the Liberty Bowl. 2 weeks later, Dave, they welcomed Boston College to Knoxville. They won the game 10-7, thanks to a pick six and a field goal.
Nothing like a good old 10-7 win. We don't see enough of those nowadays. I need more defense in my life.
I mean, I know that you really don't see those type of games anymore, but honestly, Dave, there was a lot more randomness involved in football during that time where lesser teams could win more because, let's be honest, in a 10-7 game, in a 3 to 5 point game, those are the type of games that can go either way. Once you get high scoring, you really start to separate who the better teams are in a game. But yeah, Tennessee ended up finishing that year 5-6 after starting 0-6. And then they went 11-1 and won the SEC the next year. But if they lose to Boston College, I'll tell you this. A lot of people don't know this. Johnny Majors was almost fired after the 1988 season. It was that 5-game winning streak that kept his job and the fact that he fired his whole staff. And
the defensive staff. Yeah.
And his offensive coordinator too.
Oh, did they fire him too? Okay.
I think yeah.
The major change was on defense when they went from a 3-4 to 4-3. Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. That is HOOKED for 10% off. And we want to get to Tennessee's win on the hardwood. The Vols beat Gardner-Webb. What are your major takeaways from Tennessee beating Gardner-Webb?
The big story of Tennessee beating Gardner-Webb is that Tennessee, and this is a weird thing to say, Dave, honestly does not look like a Rick Barnes coach team right now. And
for better or for worse?
For worse, but honestly, it's the thing that you thought would hold Rick Barnes back was not this. They got some defensive issues. Like some serious defensive issues. Chaz Lanier is a baller. Chaz Lanier can be a go-to scorer just like Dalton Connect was. He was 4 of 6 from 3 the other day, last night. Tennessee had like a 75-51 lead at one point and let Gardner-Webb close with 13 points. Tennessee wins 80-64. Now, in your mind, you're thinking holding a team to 64 points, that's what defenses do to win a game. No, that's what you're supposed to do against high-level competition. If you're a Rick Barnes caliber defensive team, you hold the Gardner-Webbs to under 50 points, right? Like, that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, but what about the fact that, like, Darlington Dubar, Bishop Boswell didn't play? I mean, does that factor
Well, that's the other red flag.
Okay.
You know why Darlington Dubar is not playing?
Right.
Rick Barnes has said he hasn't grasped the defense yet. And, see, this is the big difference that look, I always debated with you on the Dalton Connect as the go-to scorer as if Tennessee couldn't replicate that. They can replicate it. They are replicating it. They'll have it with Chaz Lanier, and I think Darlington Dubar is capable of doing it too. But the difference was Dalton Connect picked up the defense pretty quickly and got better, like very quickly as the season was going on. I'm not so sure. You know, you think Darlington Dubar can pick it up as time goes on, but Dave, he didn't even play in the opener. Like, how behind is he if he didn't even play in the opener against Gardner-Webb? And I mean, I'll ask you, do you think this is Rick Barnes being too principled again, like wasting a really good offensive talent because of his principles on defense? Or is he that
Yeah, but
bad?
I think you can do that against Gardner-Webb, even if that's the case, right?
Yeah, but if it's an offensive talent, don't you want them to get into their rhythm and play more? And I don't think he's as worried about rhythm until it gets into January. I think that's when you saw Dalton Connect really hit his stride last year. Part of that was being able to play defense. So I think he would be willing to sit a guy and make a statement against Gardner-Webb. Now, the other issue is that Felix Okpara has a hip pointer that was mentioned, and JP Estrella, I've been told, has a lower leg injury. So I think that you also have to make sure that this team is healthy heading into SEC play, right? Yes, you absolutely do. And I think that's another big focus of Rick Barnes's. Because yes, JP Estrella playing is kind of a concern too. I think the big thing though is with Rick Barnes is you always expected the defense to be there. It's not fair to say you always expected for the defense to be there. So I do think it's concerning for Tennessee that hasn't happened yet.
It's one game.
Yeah, but that's something that they're consistent on. With Tennessee during the Rick Barnes era, you're worried about those offensive droughts, those 9 to 10 minute offensive droughts. Now, you had some of those against Gardner-Webb, not 9 to 10 minutes, but you had a few, but I didn't worry too much because they didn't play Estrella and they didn't have Darlington Dubar ready to go. The worry is why they didn't have Dubar ready to go and their defense. So I'm raising the red flag that this could be a Rick Barnes team that doesn't play to Rick Barnes standards, that has defensive issues. And that's something that if it's at the start of the season, it'll be there at the end of the season. Look, last year, we can talk about this, Dave. You were high on Dalton Connect from the start. I'll give it to you. You watched about 2 games worth and you're like, that guy is good. And the thing that was different though, and I think you and I both agree, while Dalton was a scorer, he didn't have any trouble adjusting to Rick Barnes' defensive schemes at all. He had no trouble whatsoever. There was a bit of a weakness for him, but he immediately picked it up at least.
Okay, but it's been highly reported that he wanted to come into Barnes' system to learn defense and have more discipline in his life. That's more the exception than the rule.
Yes, but that has been what the assumption has been that all of these fifth-year guys going to Rick Barnes are doing. I mean, Darlington Dubar committed for the exact same reason. He saw Dalton Connect, and I'm pretty sure he saw Dalton Connect, and he said, I could do that. And so why is he struggling to pick up the defense? Is it complicated? I mean, Rick Barnes doesn't run that complicated of a defense, honestly. I mean, he complements his traditional flex offense that he used to run some 2-2-1 press, but now he just runs an aggressive tempo-based man. I mean, it's not like the schemes are that complex. So My guess is, I mean, what's weird is that this means that Donaldson Dewar just doesn't know how to play defense, quite honestly, which is weird.
That's not unusual in these AAU days. I will just say that. Pseudo Sham says Gardner Webb lost all of their top scorers and was still competitive with us. I'm worried. Is that fair?
Yes. I would be worried too. Yeah, I agree. They lost all their scores and they still dropped. I wouldn't say they were competitive. The game was in hand. Tennessee was up 75-51. Gardner Webb had a strong finish. I think the concern is that Gardner Webb was able to score the way they were scoring. And this is an early red flag. Now, again, you're right. It's college basketball. It's not college football. So you got plenty of time to get better. I mean, you can slump through November in college basketball. And, you know, my favorite time of the year, I don't know if it is for you, but my favorite time of the year is Thanksgiving week, when you have those college basketball tournaments, which there's all these marquee college basketball games early in the season, plus you still have college football going. So it's a lot of fun during that time. To me, the best gig in the world, you tell me, is covering college basketball and being able to go to Hawaii for Thanksgiving.
That's not a bad deal. Adam said this team is built for a full court press. We're going to get bullied dropping back to half court and slowing things down on offense. Is that fair?
Chaz Lanier and Zakai Ziegler are built for a full court press. Rick Barnes is not, like, people think Rick Barnes is old school. He's not averse to pressing. Rick Barnes loves tempo a lot. I think Rick Barnes' concern right now, and the reason he may not do it at this point, is if Dubar's not ready and if JP Estrella's banged up, part of your full court press is you got to be able to run a lot of guys. I mean, Dave, you know that Bruce Pearl had to get a really deep roster before he could really run what he wanted to run. And he was playing, there was a period where he was playing 2-stars and walk-ons that didn't belong on the court because he just wanted to make sure he had the depth to be able to run his full court press. I mean, Stephen Pearl getting on the court is evidence of that.
Well, that is that as a coach.
Well, okay, and a couple of, Josh Tabb, Ryan Childress, these guys that should not have been playing were on the court because Bruce Pearl just had to go he didn't have a choice. He had to go 10 deep. If you want to run that up-tempo full court press, which Kim Caldwell is going to run, you can't do it unless you can go 10 to 12 deep.
Okay, I think this is a little too early to be worried about the basketball team after one game, but I will put it on the poll question. Are you worried about Vol hoops? Yes or no? I'll just make it very clear. I'll throw that out there right now. I think it's a little bit too early, as we're going to switch it back to basketball here in a moment. Quality Tire Pro, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. QualityTirePros.com. Just tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports and Dave Hooker said hello. We would greatly appreciate that. As I want to get to another topic, get back to football for a second. And first, though, let's get to the stat of the day. What is the stat of the day, Caleb Calhoun? And it's brought to you by our good friends at Rick Terry and Rick Terry Jewelry Design.
It's election day. I don't really care who anybody's voting for, and I'm not going to tell you who I'm voting for. I don't think Dave's going to tell you who he's voting for, and I really the college football playoff rankings matter more tonight anyway. However, there were some very interesting stats, a few related to elections. Are you ready for this, Dave?
I'm ready.
I got a few of them. Okay, so the last 6 Tennessee coaches to be fired were all fired within a year of an election. 5 of them were fired in an election year.
Ouch.
Funny enough. Bill Battle was fired in 76 when Jimmy Carter got elected. Johnny Majors was fired in 92 when Bill Clinton got elected. Philip Fulmer was fired the week Barack Obama got elected in 2008. Derek Dooley was fired in 2012, the year he was reelected. Butch Jones was fired within a year of Donald Trump getting elected in 2016. He was fired about 10 months later in 2017. And lastly, Jeremy Pruitt got fired when Joe Biden got elected. Oh, it gets better. Every
game of chess, Joe Biden, Jeremy Pruitt.
Name a chest?
Game of chess.
Joe Biden, Jeremy Pruitt. I mean, like, okay, so you're asking if Jeremy Pruitt can beat somebody whose brain's not all there.
Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Rick Terry Jewelry, rickterryjewelry.com. If you want to be a member of Hooker's Corner, you can be eligible for our fantastic monthly prizes, weekly prizes as well. The last one was a Dylan Samson autographed mini helmet, just $9.98. Sports Treasures, over 5 million Sports Treasures, supplies us with the great giveaways on a monthly basis. We'll have weekly prizes as well, including books and t-shirts. Just join Hooker's Corner for increased recruiting coverage, more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. But Sports Treasures, over 5 million Sports Treasures, North Knoxville, over 35 years there. Follow them below on their Facebook page, Sports Treasures TN. That is Sports Treasures TN. Now, it is time for the college football ranking playoff discussion that I firmly believe will benefit the Vols, that they will get, if it comes down to it, they will get the benefit of the doubt. But Caleb, you don't seem to think so. So what reasoning do you have for Tennessee not getting the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the college football playoff selection committee, not only for tonight, but moving forward as well? And we're going to do that with John Adams here momentarily. So hang tight, and it'll be Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Also, we'll have 4 downs with John. Tennessee's wide receivers have become a problem. It's just a fact. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Give us 2 minutes, and we'll be right back.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
How contrived do you think the college football playoff will be? And I say that, do you think they'll try to do something goofy to get people's attention? Do you think that there will be a team ranked lower than it should be or higher than it should be, Caleb, based off of just being salacious, being different, getting views, getting clicks, whatever you want to call it. And if so, who might that team be?
I think they're going to do that for the purposes of putting interest on certain games each week. If that's fair to say. So, like,
totally agree.
Yeah. I think that's how they're going to do it. That's how they've done it in the past. So, I mean, this week there's not like a great. It's funny. We're in the final 4 weeks of the season, and there is only one top 25 matchup this weekend, Dave. I don't know how that happens with Alabama, LSU, and Georgia and Ole Miss. I think I could easily see them put Ole Miss at like number 10, even though they should be like the 16 or 17, to say this is a college football playoff elimination game for Ole Miss, something like that. And I could easily see them branding things like that, guys. No, and someone brought up BYU and Indiana. They're not really going to inflate BYU because BYU is already favored to win the Big 12. So they're basically a favorite to get in anyway. Indiana, you could say that. That will put a lot of eyeballs on Michigan facing Indiana this week. So if like they put Indiana at number 5, I could easily see them do that. There's obviously Notre Dame. They might, because Colorado has a tough game against Texas Tech this week, who just won a game last week and is 6-3. I could see them, just because of Coach Prime, flirt with Colorado being at like 13 or 12, which they should be in the 20s, not 13 or 12. But I could see them do that to be like, hey, Colorado beats Texas Tech. All of a sudden, looking at them in the playoff. I mean, look, they're going to do that. By the way, the selection committee in college basketball does that. I don't know if you guys ever watched this. They set up the bracket to maximize their chances of big upsets. And then they want you all to get excited about the upsets. That's why college basketball NCAA tournament upsets, Dave, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, they're the cheapest upsets in all of sports.
Well, that depends what you define as an upset. Do you define a 9 beating an 8 as an upset?
No, I'm talking about if it's a team in the teens, 13 to 16 winning is an upset to me. A 13 seed to a 16 seed winning is a big upset to me. And I think that the way the game is set up. Also, so a 13 to a 16 winning in the first round, I'll say this, an 8 to anything 8 or below reaching the Sweet 16 is a big upset. Is that fair to say? 8 and down reaching the Sweet 16 is an upset.
Well, not necessarily. I just look at it as far as upsets. I just look at it in terms of what Vegas says. I mean, there will be 5-11s or 5-12s.
5-12s. There's always one.
Okay, 5-12s. I mean, there will be a game in which that's maybe the 12's favored, or it's 2 or 3 points.
Well, they do that on purpose now. They like the storyline of the 12-5. So they purposely put like a really good 12 against a really bad 5 that shouldn't be a 5 seed. At least.
But is that an upset to you?
No, that's why I'm saying the upsets, quote unquote, by like the technical measurement are cheap in college basketball because the selection committee literally sets up the bracket to make the upsets. And because that's their only storyline, because spoiler alert, and this is my warning against expanding the college football playoff, they know that's the only way anybody actually cares about college basketball, because nobody actually cares when Duke and UNC play and they're 1-2 in the regular season, because everybody's saying, oh, they're going to make the NCAA tournament. So what do? They literally design the brackets in the NCAA tournament to maximize the number of upsets just to keep people watching, because that's the only time people watch college basketball. They totally ruin the regular season just for these 3 weeks of fun. And look, I will say that college football, if they expand the playoff beyond 16, that's going to be the same thing in college football. Now, right now at 12, you're okay. 14, you're still probably okay. But yeah, the way they're going to do it is they're going to put these fake rankings in each week just to create drama behind certain games to give you the illusion that this team might get in. That's probably not a real contender to get in, because what they have done in college football, I'll tell you this. I'm looking at the November slate and the heart of college football. October and September games are going to be rendered more and more useless. They haven't killed the regular season completely, but honestly, October and September games feel like borderline irrelevant now that we're in November. And I've never felt that about college football before, Dave.
Okay. I do want to say this, though. I believe that, and this is going to rub some people the wrong way, Tennessee may have deserved that number one ranking that they got in 2022 and weren't able to hold on to. But I felt part of that was a college football playoff committee saying, these guys can't play defense, and let's go ahead and make them number one now, because I don't believe it's going to stick. I did think that at the time. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I mean, I totally agree with it. I'll take it even further. I think it was more contrived than that. They were playing Georgia that week, and they wanted a number one matchup. They wanted a 2-versus-1 matchup in the college football playoff. That the ranking during that time?
Yes.
Yeah. So look, I'll just be honest. I think that's all it was they wanted that desirable 2-versus-1 matchup that they got. I'm trying to pull it up now just to confirm.
Well, I got a quick question for you, and maybe you can help me with this. Will the college football playoff that comes out today, will that have them seated where they would potentially be? In other words, home field teams. In other words, listen, the group of 5 team is going to be at 12 at the end of the ratings, right? The rankings.
I don't think they're going to seed it like that. No, I think they're
that's my question. Is this just this is the AP by a bunch of goofballs that know very little about football?
Yes, they're just going to rank 1 through 25, and then it's going to be the 4 highest conference champions get the bye, and then the highest ranked group of 5 champion. And then, so don't look at it as if Tennessee's number 11, you can't sit there and say Tennessee's in the college football playoff, because they're not going to be in if they're number 11 in these rankings.
Okay, so in other words, even though this wouldn't go down this way as far as who is truly 1 through 4, there could be 4 Big Ten teams at the top of the rankings tonight, theoretically.
Theoretically, but they won't be the top 4 seeds. Exactly.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes it slightly more confusing. John Adams joins us now of the Knoxville News Sentinel. His appearance is brought to you by our good friends at Neubert Collision Center. John, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Dave. Thanks.
All right. We've had great bench off 2024. What are your thoughts on having great squad off 2024?
The same as the bench off. Don't know, don't care, don't know, don't want to know. Just an awful idea. Well, I say that. It's probably a good promo for you.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll do that. All right. Now, I can't squat at all. John, you know me and my knees. I can't do that. All right. It is time for Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank. And Commercial Bank is where I've been banking for over 25 years. Commercial Bank, a member FDIC, life made better. So bank on it, John. Tennessee will either be a darling for the college football playoff, given that they could theoretically put a home game in Neyland Stadium, which I think would be huge, or that Tennessee gets the short end of the stick from the college football playoff, like I thought they did in 2022 when they were ranked behind Alabama. So if you had a bank on one, brought to you by Commercial Bank, what would you bank on?
I'd bank on the first one. 22, the problem with that, it was that embarrassing loss to South Carolina. That was just an horrendous game, a mediocre South Carolina team. So what you don't want to have when you go before the selection committee, you don't want to have any glaring evidence that this team might not be quite good enough. You just want to minimize any potential red flags that signify weakness. And that was a glaring problem for Tennessee, I thought, in 22. This team, the thing about this team, yeah, it had a bad loss to Arkansas because I was a mediocre team. However, it was only a 5-point game. Nobody's blowing Tennessee out, coming close to that. Tennessee's competitive in every game, even though it hasn't won that impressively. So I think that trend will continue. For example, Georgia's not going to blow Tennessee out. That'll be a close game.
Yep, I agree. Caleb, do you think that the college football playoff committee, if Tennessee is in a precarious position where they could go one direction or another, do you think they get the benefit of the doubt by the College Football Playoff Committee, or do you think not?
I think if they get the benefit of the doubt, it's because of their ratings draw and because of them potentially playing a home game. But I want to say this. I think they won't. I think there would be an actual reflexive move to not give them the benefit of the doubt. And John, I want to know your thoughts on this. I think the peripheral CFP voter thinks of Tennessee as the exciting, high-flying offense with Josh Heupel, the one that's going to put up a lot of points, which, by the way, makes for good TV in a college football playoff.
Yeah.
And not seeing that this year is going to concern them, even though they're going to ignore the fact that Tennessee's so great defensively.
Well, see, I really, Caleb, I really don't know just how deeply this selection committee dives into all this stuff. You would like to think it would go very deep. You want to analyze all sorts of weaknesses and strengths of every team, but I don't think that at all. I think there'll
Randall
be some real
McDaniel is on there. Randall McDaniel is on there. Randall McDaniel, the guy who played defensive line for the Vikings for a number of years, he's on there.
Why is he on there?
I have no idea. John, you know more college football than I do, and I could go and list the College Football Playoff Committee members. I think Adam Sparks may have written about it after I did it. He probably stole it from here. But you don't know 75% of those dudes.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, as much as
I know, just probably a bunch of hacks.
John's been around college football since it began. And I bet you that he doesn't know all of the college football. Not quite that long. Okay, bank on it right now. John, Caleb, and I could do a better job of picking the teams in the college football playoff. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
So, John, let me run through these real quick, and you stop me when you know who this person is. Chris Alt. Chet Gladchuck. We know who Jim Grobe is. Ward Manuel.
How much? What? Who?
Ward Manuel. Do you know who he is?
No, not really.
Me neither. Randall McDaniel. We know who he is. Long career in the NFL. I have no idea. I mean, he must have won. It must have been like Willy Wonka's golden ticket. That's the only thing I think, that Randall McDaniel buys a Hershey's and there's like this golden ticket in it. And he goes, you get to be on the College Football Playoff Committee. Gary Pinkel, we know who that is. Mac Rhodes, we know who Mike Riley is. Can't find a coaching job, so just be on the committee. David Saylor, I don't know who he is, but he might have been the guy that was behind OxyContin. We'll check on that. Will Shields, Kelly Whiteside, Carla
Wait
Williams.
a minute. Will Shields?
Yes, Will Shields.
I know who that is.
Kind of, or you completely know who that is?
No, I really do. He was an offensive lineman for Nebraska. He was one of the best offensive linemen I've ever seen in college football. I'm not saying he should be on the committee. I was just stunned that I actually knew somebody on the committee. Like a long lost friend came back. I was great.
Yeah, no, I remember Will Shields as well, actually, but more from his time with the Kansas City Chiefs. But in all honesty, could the three of us do a better job of picking the college football playoff rankings?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I'm not joking. That simply because we watch so much ball. I mean, this isn't rocket science. Yeah. It's just knowing what's going on in college football. I mean, Caleb sits there and analyzes every coaching performance on a college football weekend. It amazes me. Think of it. I mean, there are a few ex-coaches on there, think about the coaches poll, which is sponsored by my company. Maybe I shouldn't get too deeply into this, but I mean, some of those coaches polls through the years are just awful. The decisions they make, how they rank whom. I mean, I always have thought the media poll was better. I think guys take it more seriously and watch more football. How much football do you think these coaches were watching on? I mean, they got to worry about their own game. They're so single-minded.
John, are you disrespecting these coaches?
They don't have an awareness. Oh, I'm sorry if it came across that way.
How dare you? How could you do such a thing? Sorry. I'll let you go, John.
Just this idea that these people are going to be, this is a great meeting of the minds, and they'll spend all this time and they'll analyze this and that, and they'll come out with the best teams without a doubt. I don't have any confidence they will do that.
What about Dave? Let me jump in real quick because I want to ask you guys this because we talked about it before the set. Like, I want to take it a step further to what Dave talked about me before you came on, John, which is are these rankings contrived? Do you think the whole reason they have rankings in the season to begin with is just so people know to just give people an idea of what games they want to be watching that weekend, John? Because there's no point to do weekly college football rankings. I mean, the selection committee doesn't do a weekly selection show.
It's the same thing it's always been, even before there was a lot of televised games. It's publicity. They generate publicity for college football. That's what the rankings do. That's all it is.
If I'm Alabama and LSU, I go into this college football ranking saying to myself, I'm probably going to get a boost because we play each other this week, and it makes the game look a little bit better. But I know that's fool's gold for the rest of the selection process.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think Alabama versus LSU is certainly an elimination game, so it almost has a playoff tone to it. So, yeah, there'll be a lot of interest in that game. But because of the 12-team play. The what?
I said, but you don't need weekly rankings. You don't need weekly rankings to tell you that. You just know that it's an elimination game.
Well, I know that, but this is it generates publicity, and that's what it's free advertising. Top 25 poll. It's just a part of. It's just deeply embedded in college football, and that's not going to change. They're always going to have rankings.
Bank on it. There's one person on the committee that John's did not speak up and say that he knows, and he probably should. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
All right, John. It's Kelly Whiteside here. Are you familiar with her?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I'll give you that then, because you didn't speak up, and she works for your company. So to me, that's somebody that you should be aware of.
Why is she on the committee?
I don't know. Why aren't you on the committee or your buddy Mr. Topmeyer instead? I hear you're all's writing, and now Blake is a national writer. I still see his stuff. I don't know why Kelly Whiteside's on there.
Well, I probably shouldn't comment on that. But good for her. I'm sure she'll do a great job and represent the company well. What?
Well, and this is there's more to it, because the reason I harp on like in-season rankings is they damage their own credibility by doing it. Last year, just to give you guys a quick rundown, they had Florida State at number 4 leading into the ACC, leading into conference championship week. Florida State then goes and beats Louisville. Texas beats Oklahoma State. Louisville is higher ranked than Oklahoma State. But then they flip it and put Texas in the college football playoff, which they should have done. I'm not denying that. Texas was better. But why would you had no rationale to flip it except for acknowledging, we shouldn't have had Florida State ranked higher to begin with.
Well, yeah, you can find
John?
all kinds of contradictions in that. I mean, that the whole Florida State thing brings up another point, but because it's his quarterback, I mean, it's just pretty much eliminated from the process. We talk about Tennessee's great defense. Sometimes it can keep you in the game, even when your quarterback goes. So, well, I'm getting off on a tangent here. Never mind that.
No, that's understandable. Let me ask you this, though. With the college football playoff, I know why it's not just a formula, but in my opinion, I would have a BCS formula. The reason it's not is because they want to put this TV show together and you will see 5 million advertisers. Nothing wrong with that. But John, you will see 5 million advertisers during the program. And that's the reason it's not it's not just a formula that you and I could predict, that you and I could put out there. It's not. And they want to make a television show each week out of this, John. So how would you do it if you were the czar of college football? How would you do it?
I would just have me, John Adams, select the teams.
All right. I like that.
I don't want any BCS formula in there either. I'll just pick the teams. I won't have any problem with that. I can be very objective.
Okay, but why in the world would you not like a BCS formula? Am I the only one that likes the BCS formula?
I hope so. I remember when they had all that nonsense. They had all those different formulas and different factored into the BCS selection. It was nonsensical. I'm not big on analytics. I know Caleb is, but that speaks to his generation. But I go more with the eye test. You can pump any kind of facts you want into a computer and come up with some formula, but there are too many variables. I don't buy that at all. Just let me pick the teams.
I'm kind of okay with that.
I would be okay with your Caleb picking the teams, honestly. I think you could be objective out of respect for the game.
No, I could. I definitely would. What was the politician that was on it the first year?
Condoleezza Rice?
Yes, Condoleezza Rice. So let me ask you this. Would Kamala Harris rather win the election tonight or be on the college football playoff committee? I mean, when you had Condoleezza Rice on it,
I don't want her on any kind of committee. I don't want Kamala Harris on any committee, okay?
When you had Condoleezza Rice on there, no offense to her, I think she's an exceptional human being. But didn't we all roll our eyes a little bit?
Well, I mean, she's probably just as good as some of those other hacks they have on it.
Fair.
This is the thing. The whole committee is, that's part of the TV show. And if you ever watch the intro to the college football playoff, like rankings each week, they have them like throwing down their notepads and throwing down their pens and leading us to believe they took insane extreme notes. Like they were a jury deliberating on the results of the game.
Give me a break.
I don't even need to watch the games. I'm a resume guy. I'm like, give me the resume of these teams. And I can tell you, this isn't that hard. It's not that complicated for the most part. Is there ever a debate about more than maybe two teams?
You know what? I voted in the AP poll a lot of years. And when I would do it, it was really frustrating to me to watch how some people voted. I mean, they would pick their preseason rankings, and then it would take an act of Congress for them to move one of those teams. I mean, it was almost like their ego was invested in their preseason rankings. It's not supposed to be. You can predict how you think the top 25 will end up in your preseason rankings, who you think will be the best. But these things should change dramatically from week to week. It should be all about what a team has accomplished. It's simple.
I agree. John's appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center, as we will talk about Tennessee's wide receivers and why they have let the Vols, you and Nico, down.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
4 downs, 4 questions, 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show. 4 downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
4 downs brought to you by Double D Piping Protection, fire suppression services at its best. The moral of the story on 4 downs is some people have been disappointed by Nico Iamaleava. However, I would argue there's another group of players you should be more concerned about and that have let Nico down. What do we do, Coop, if we want to be a part of the program?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right, what down, Coop?
Coop here. First down.
First down is this. John, these Tennessee receivers, have they made nearly enough plays on their own to be an advantage for Nico every time he steps under center or drops back in the shotgun?
No, not at all. I mean, this receiving core is very overrated. Tennessee coach Josh Heupel talked in preseason about how talented it was, how deep it was. And maybe it's deep. Maybe they got a bunch of average guys, but that's what I'm seeing. I'm not seeing guys making plays. I'm not seeing somebody turn a hitch route into a touchdown. I'm not seeing guys make people miss. We're talking about watching a lot of college football every Saturday. You see it in other games. You see a receiver turn a short pass into a long gain. What do you see with Tennessee's guys? It's as though they have a bunch of possession receivers. I thought Chris Brazell was going to be more of a deep threat. I'm not seeing that with him. He had a good catch against Alabama, drops too many passes. I guess Dante Thorne is probably I guess maybe their best playmaker. Brew McCoy looks slower than ever. He looks I think go back to his 2 years ago when he had 52 catches. I mean, I didn't think he was a speed guy, but he looked faster than he does now. Maybe it has to do with last year's injury, but he's extremely overrated as a receiver. It's as though Tennessee has a bunch of number 3 receivers.
Ouch. Now, injuries have been a part of that, Caleb, especially with Squirrel White. We've seen Dante Thornton leave. We've seen Brew McCoy with a hand injury, but John, you pointed out when you and I talked about Brew McCoy, it just doesn't seem like he's gaining a lot of separation. And I wonder if that injury last year is still a factor in that.
Well, it could be, but as I said, we never thought of him as a speed guy. But we also make tackles and maybe make a play. But I'm not seeing any acceleration from him. Same with Squirrel White. I really thought when I saw Squirrel White as a freshman, he would become an all-SEC receiver. I thought he would be a great slot receiver, had speed, may have those quick darting moves, and I was totally wrong about him. Yeah, he's had a shoulder injury this year, but still, even that aside, he wasn't as good last year as I thought he would be, not nearly as good.
To push back just a little bit on Brew, he has had, I think, 2 solid games recently with 80 yards against Alabama and 56 against Kentucky. I think they're using him to move the ball a little more with his physicality. But I will say, John, I'm with you. I think the biggest difference between this year and last year is that last year we were complaining about receivers not making plays for Joe Milton every now and then, like making extra plays. This year, we're not complaining about them not making play, not like going the extra mile to make a spectacular play. We're complaining about them not just executing the basic plays, like catching a ball over the middle that's an easy touchdown, which is the difference.
Very true. Let's get to second down. Yes, John?
No, go ahead.
No, you can go. I insist.
No, I'm not going. It's your show, Dave. You want second down? Let's do second down.
Amazing. Second down.
Is Brew McCoy more of a tight end than a wide receiver?
Yeah, he's kind of smallish for tight end.
But you do think he's more of a tight end than a receiver?
Yeah.
I think he's more of a wide receiver. Brew McCoy doesn't look any slower to me than Juwan Jennings looked for Tennessee a few years ago, honestly. I just think Juwan, I still think he's more of a receiver. I think we haven't seen him have the chance to really showcase himself as much.
Okay. He's had a lot of games to showcase himself. I'm just going to say that. 9 games.
Tied now.
Yeah, he's the best.
Okay. Do you guys not think he can run faster than a 4.7 40 right now?
I hope so.
Because John, I say that. Well, John, I say that because Juwan Jennings could not crack a 4.7 40, and he had one of the best receiving seasons of all time in Tennessee history with Jeremy Pruitt as his head coach in 2019. And Jared Garantano throwing him the ball.
I would say this with Jennings, too. You have to put a lot of work into 40 time. It's really a completely different workout than playing football. And I'm just going to guess that he didn't spend a lot of time in learning how to run the 40. You can't tell me that Juwan Jennings, who's had a great NFL career, you can't tell me that he couldn't run a sub 4.5 40 if he spent time with the track coach.
No, I don't think he could. I actually don't think he could.
Okay, then he would, if that's the best he could do. I mean, there are Tennessee offensive linemen that have done that.
I think I think with Brew, it's other issues not related to Brew that aren't getting him the chances this year. That's just all I want to say.
Okay, you're telling me, though, that David Ligon and Juwan Jennings in a 40-yard dash would be about the same.
Possibly. Juwan Jennings looked slow when he played at Tennessee.
Get to third down. All right, who has been Tennessee's best receiver? John, best receiver this season.
Is that not third down?
I think I hit third down. Did I not?
You did not. No.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Tennessee's best receiver has been.
Glad we got the down cleared up.
Yeah, it's like Colorado all over again.
Who's been Tennessee's best receiver? There is none. It's just a group of guys that do about the same thing.
Ouch. Caleb?
I mean, I think just numbers-wise, it's been clearly Dante Thornton. He's got 17 catches for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. But I'm going to stick with my defensive Brew because even though he doesn't have a touchdown and just 345 yards, he catches a lot of passes in coverage, and he turns a 10-yard gain, and whatever catch Brew makes, you should add about 10 to 15 yards onto the catch because he's going to shed some tackles every single time.
Is he this year?
I'm not seeing that at all.
I've definitely seen that. I saw a catch against Alabama where he shed about 5 tackles and set Tennessee up in the red zone. And I saw one, I think it was NC State or Oklahoma where he did that. Wow. Look, I just don't think Tennessee's throwing Brew the ball enough. I've said that from the start. They need to be throwing it to him more.
All right, so who can save this Tennessee wide receiver group? Fourth down, brought to you by Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
That's hot.
It is. All right, so who is the receiver for fourth down?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
That could salvage this season for Tennessee's wide receivers. I will go first. I think it's Chris Brazzell. I think he has had the drops. I think that he is a jump ball guy that they can go to if they use him in that way. And I realize Josh Heupel wants these fantastic passing route combinations and he wants you to run it according to the tree. But once a half, you should say, Chris Brazel, go run deep. We're going to chuck it up to you. I think he could have a huge impact on the second half of the season, especially there were a couple of plays I thought, now I know he's had drops, but there were a couple of plays, John, in which I thought that Nico should have given him a better opportunity to catch the ball.
Yeah, I just can't get that last game out of my mind with that drop he had. That's possible. I tell you who I could save the receiving core is Dylan Sampson. I would throw him the ball more. I think he's a guy that can make plays in the open field. And Tennessee's, what's he caught? Maybe 9 passes all year. He caught more last year, I think.
Well, no, I agree with that. But Caleb brought up a really good point, and I didn't come down on Nico as hard as Caleb did. This is a couple of weeks ago where Dylan Sampson is literally standing in the flat with no defender within 38 yards of him. And I think that's a high-level read for Nico. Now, that's a high-level read that's difficult in the first half of your first full-time season as a starter, but it better not be difficult in the last half or the last third, wherever we are.
What we're saying is Nico needs to turn more into check down Tom Brady, who became the greatest quarterback of all time because he never missed the check down.
Great way to play chess, John.
But I'm playing checkers. But don't you think Dylan Sampson could make plays in the passing game? He's a guy that can break tackles. He can elude defenders. I just think he has more playmaking skills than anybody in that receiving core.
May I raise my hand as giving you the reason why he hasn't? I think that Josh Heupel has been so determined to make this downfield passing game work that it's affected his judgment in more than one way. And I think that's one of the ways. Is that a reach by either of you guys?
No, I kind of agree.
No, you
a little bit
really sold that well, Dave.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, John, to bring it, Dave has always brought this up to me, and I know you're a fan of him and I'm a fan of him too, but
Me? You're all both fans of me?
No.
No, Dave's brought this up, and I'm a fan of him.
Well,
and
what
I know
I'm about to
you
say
are
is,
too.
Dave brought this up to me about Steve Spurrier, who you covered closely, and we're all fans of Spurrier here. But we've called Josh Heupel the modern day Spurrier. But John, even wouldn't you agree that like towards the end, one of Spurrier's Achilles heels at Florida was he tried to make his passing game work, even if you took it away from him, and he would get desperate and just get frustrated and throw it way too much and not patiently settle on the run game. And that's where I'm seeing another form of Steve Spurrier and Josh Heupel this year.
John, I still remember it was a preseason event, and the always insightful and intellectual John Chavis said to us at a remote, me and Jimmy Himes, he said, I think we got him figured out during the break. Sure enough, they did. I think, though, to Caleb's point, it was more about Steve Spurrier being too stubborn in throwing the football. I think in that 2001 game, which is one of the greatest wins in Tennessee history, if Steve Spurrier just decides to run the football, I'm not so sure that Florida doesn't win that game.
Well, I do know that Steve Spurrier, when he went to South Carolina, completely changed his offensive approach. He became a run-first guy. And some of Steve Spurrier's best teams at Florida, he ran the ball effectively.
Mostly in the second half, though. Mostly in the second half.
Yeah, but that was by design. I mean, that's how it worked. I remember Eric Rhett piling up a lot of yards in the second half. And that, I tell you, that, yeah, I've made that comparison between Heupel and Spurrier a lot, but not so much anymore. I don't think Heupel's a play caller.
Well, I would say this. If that's the only thing he's missing, then he's still a very good coach as far as putting together a game plan.
Oh, I agree. I agree, but I don't think he's in Spurrier's class.
All right, stay tuned. I want to remind you that the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. More pleasant surprise this season for the Vols. Is it Dylan Sampson or Tennessee's defense? We'll get to that right after this Off the Hook Sports.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare. With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
Want to remind you the portions of the program are brought to you by our good friends at Work Trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Now, time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standard to be put to work. The process is quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. Check them out. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with an app-hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Trucks, look at those trucks, supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road. No dealership runaround. Contractor, service industry. Got to know Work Trucks with an X. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, look at it right there. WorkTrucksLLC.com. WorkTrucksLLC.com. Why risk chancing your future in business on a wrong piece of equipment that burns your time? WorkTrucksLLC.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. They will have you fit to a T.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
John's appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. Tennessee's defense has collided with opposing offenses quite frequently this year. Dylan Sampson has had quite a bit of contact with opposing defenses. The more pleasant surprise between the two, John, is it Dylan Sampson or Tennessee's defense?
Oh, I think it's the defense. I thought Dylan Sampson would be really good. I mean, I think he was for the past 2 years, he's been Tennessee's most talented running back. He was behind more experienced guys who did a great job. But yeah, I expected him to be really good. One of the top running backs in the country. The defense, I thought it would be better, but I didn't imagine it would be like this. This is a dominant defense. It's a better defense. Well, I think it's better than Georgia's. I would put this defense up against anybody right now. It just makes things happen, so disruptive, and that's the biggest reason Tennessee's where it is right now.
Caleb, what say you?
John is making the more reasonable point, and so I should side with them. But just for me personally, it's Dylan Samson, because, John, I thought Dylan Samson was going to lose his starting job halfway through this year to Peyton Lewis. I did not believe he was physical enough to be the type of running back he is. He looked just like too soft of a running back his first 2 years at Tennessee, and his weaknesses in pass pro showed that. So for him to take this next step to not just be able to withstand 20 to 25 carries a game and wear down defenses in the second half, but also be so improved in pass pro. I mean, as bad as Lance Hurd was earlier in the year, guys, I don't think we noticed how many more times Nico would have been rocked if Dylan Samson did not pick up a blitz that Lance Hurd just whiffed on. And I think because of that, I mean, Lance Hurd is lucky that he's not getting blamed for Nico being like broken in half and carted off the field, because there's about a few times where he allowed that to happen, and Dylan Samson saved him. So for that part alone, I got to go with Dylan Samson. And then the other part is, even if I thought Dylan Samson was going to be good, I don't think any of us thought he'd have the most all-time productive season for a running back in Tennessee football history.
No, I would have to side with Caleb on this, John. I think it's Dylan Samson, because I thought that he would get about 60% of the carries, and that either Peyton Lewis or Cam Selden would step into that backup role and might end up overtaking him. I still think Peyton Lewis, and what we saw briefly of him and what I've been told about him in practice, is going to be a more talented tailback that Tennessee will have next year. I don't want to take it, well, assuming Dylan Samson goes pro, which he may not at running back, but let me backstep on that. So I thought that another guy, not Deshaun Bishop, would be the backup and eventually push for more playing time, and you would see a competition there for those 20% of the carries or whatever. Let's say they split them 40-40, and then you've got 20% of the carries, kind of a who's hot mentality. The defense, though, is surprising to me, because let's all be honest. We were sold a couple of bills of goods in the preseason, John. One was the wide receivers are going to be deep and awesome. One was the secondary is a lot better. Well, we should be able to return one of those to the store, because they were right on the defensive backs, but the receivers haven't been that. If you talk about an overall complete overhaul of the secondary, I think we have to be pretty surprised that they played as well as they have.
Oh, I agree. I go back with Dylan Samson, though. I really didn't question his durability. I agree with Caleb. Certainly his blocking was circumspect, but as a runner, he proved that in the regular season game against Kentucky. He proved it against a tough Iowa defense in the bowl game. He can make the tough yards. He's a complete running back, so I'm not surprised at all by what he's done. I am surprised by the secondary. It's been better than I thought it would be. And I thought the defensive front would be a team strength. Even saying that, I didn't imagine it would be this good, where you're going to rotate 13 guys in there, and I really can't distinguish the starters from the backups. They just all make plays. They're all 300 pounds, it seems like, and they can all run.
John, are you more shocked with – now, don't get me wrong. At the beginning of the year, we all expected the defensive line to be good. We had questions about the secondary. Are you more shocked that the defensive line is this elite, or that the secondary is just good this year?
I guess the secondary, maybe, because I thought that could be the Achilles heel for the defense and maybe the overall team. But Will Brooks has made key plays. He's become a fan favorite. McCoy is a great cover corner. So the transfers, not all of them paid off, but he paid off. And so, yeah, it's much better. And just the overall, the way they've complemented each other. I was concerned about the linebacking core going into the season, and they lose Keenan Peely to injury, and they still look okay at linebacker. That it's just, man, when you've got a defensive front as deep and good as this one, I wonder how many of those guys will end up playing in the NFL. I think a lot of them will.
The secondary particularly?
No, I'm thinking about the defensive front.
Oh.
I didn't make that
clear.
But I think in the defensive front, there will be guys that play in the NFL.
Yeah, and John, we've talked about this before. I don't know if we talked about it with you, but it's funny because this defensive line, with the exception of Pierce, like, I don't know if any of them could start on one of those like late 90s, early 2000s defensive lines that had, you go from Leonard Little to Sean Ellis to Darwin Walker to John Henderson to Albert Hainsworth to Billy Ratliff. But I will say that while those linemen may have been better, those groups never went as deep as this line, right?
No, not at all. I mean, Tennessee would go 2 deep, but not 3 deep on the defensive front. And again, I give Rodney Garner a lot of credit for evaluating, developing these guys. But when I watch him and all the SEC football I watch, I don't see other teams bringing players off the bench who make plays the way this defensive front does. Like I said, when you're alternating people, perhaps James Pierce is playing a game. He's probably increased his workload in the last few games. But overall, for someone who's supposed to be maybe one of the best pass rushers in the country, if he's out of the game, it's not as though you really notice it, because you got a guy like Joshua Joseph in there, and the interior rush is as significant as the rush from the edge, I think.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I agree with a lot of what you're saying on that. And this unit is very shockingly good and deep. And I think it really shows into the fourth quarter of games where, as I'm sure you've noticed, and we've all noticed, one of the things that's helped Tennessee, isn't it, is that while they're not playing well in the first half, in the second half, they're able to run the ball and the other team can't run the ball on them. And that becomes a difference.
No, John, when did you become a believer of this secondary? Because it seemed like the entire month of September we kept saying, oh, they haven't been really tested yet. Or are you a complete 100% believer?
Well, it's really kind of hard to isolate the secondary. I mean, you look at the overall defense, and it's productive and very, very good. So I don't think you can have one of the best defenses in the country with a bad secondary. You just can't. That still might be the least, well, maybe the weakest part of a defense, but the defense is so strong, so you don't even like to use the term weak. But when did I become, I wouldn't say enamored, but more confident in the secondary? I don't think there was one great moment. I just thought it was kind of a gradual thing. I started looking at the results game after game, and said, these guys are much better than I thought they would be. So to me, there's no weakness on the defense now.
No, I don't think there is either. And John referred to Will Brooks as being kind of a fan favorite. Caleb, why do you think that is?
Well, he's a walk-on, and I like Will Brooks too. He's a walk-on, and he plays smart. But
well,
John, wait, I just have to throw this out there. He fulfills the white defensive back stereotype in the worst way, because he's always in great position, but when he has the interception and he's got a clear path to a touchdown, how did he not score on that interception on Saturday against Kentucky?
Yeah, John, he's a son of a coach. Yeah, he's a harder worker than anybody on the team. He is a gym rat. He's every white stereotype, right?
Yeah, but he's making plays.
No, I know. I'm just having a good time. I think that
we like him. We love Will Brooks.
Yeah, I mean, Okay, this is going to sound crazy, but are you ready for something? You know who he reminds me of? And no, I'm not going to say a white dude. I'm going to say
Iowa
Bill.
defensive back.
I'm
A
not
guy
going
who
to say
plays for
Bill
Iowa.
Bates. People said on our YouTube page, Bill Bates. I'm sorry. He's a better athlete than Bill Bates. And he's not a rock down defender like Bates was. He plays true safety. He reminds me of Jabril Wilson because he always is around the football. I don't know how they stack up when they run the 40 and all that stuff, but I just remember the one guy that when he transferred in, I think it was a junior college, I was like, I don't need to sit there and watch him every down because he's going to be around the football almost every time, and that's Will Brooks.
Yeah, that's a fair comparison, and I think I wonder. Well, I just think people have underestimated though his athletic talent.
I mean, but that should have been a touch. Like, that was everything great Will Brooks had, okay? But, John, he was 20 yards clear of anybody when he had that interception. How did he get tackled from behind?
Well, I think that he got away with the NC State thing running towards the middle of the field, John. I think that's what happened. And you don't want to run towards the middle of the field. You want to run towards the sideline so that guys can block for you.
I mean, can we be any more picky about him?
I'm
just saying, man, you got to run that one.
You're critiquing the way he returns interceptions. I mean, come on.
Yeah, Caleb.
The guy's a player.
Yeah, Caleb.
Hey, I'm still critiquing Deion Grant to this day for that interception, not against Florida in 98, but the one he had in 99 in the swamp that should have set up a game-winning field goal for Tennessee. I still blame Deion Grant for stepping out of bounds on that interception. He could have gotten about 20 more yards, and Tennessee wouldn't have even had to have the 4th and 3 toss play to Jamal.
I'm still all over Julian Battle for dropping that interception in the 2001 SEC championship game that eventually got Philip Fulmer fired. Dynasty Pools and Spas. All you have to do is mention Off the Hook Sports, and you'll get $500 off. That's $500 off. They're also going to be doing a couple of gift baskets. One, if you buy before Christmas, you get entered into a drawing to win a basket of chemicals and other goodies. The other one is for the local toy drive, so go ahead and check that out. They have cover lift, steps, chemicals, and delivery all come standard with the purchase of their spas. So mention Off the Hook Sports. Again, Off the Hook Sports, you get $500 off of a spa. Plus, if you stop by, say, hello, Scott. Hello, Kyrie. I stopped by here in this beautiful area of Athens. I'm interested in a spa Dave Hooker sent me. May I have one of his books or T-shirts with Hooker right across the front? You can pick those up at Dynasty Pools and Spas just for taking a look at a spa. You know, the best thing about Dynasty Pools and Spas is that they've got it all taken care of. What does that mean? Well, you stop by their showroom and check out their fantastic selection of top-notch spas in that showroom in Athens. Make your pick and get ready, because Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers within 125 miles of that location in Athens, that fantastic showroom. They've got the cover lift, steps, chemicals, and everything you need. Delivery at no extra charge. They're just down the road in Athens. You pick the spa you want, and it'll be there for you. Oftentimes discounted with military and first responders discounts. Also blemish models, or just mention Off the Hook Sports. That's Off the Hook Sports for $500 off. There's a discount for you on spas made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas also has the best chemicals for you and your spa and your pool. No fillers, just the chemicals made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas, $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. Dynasty Pools and Spas, dynastypoolsandspas.com.
That's hot. The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Touchdown!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
John Adams was so relaxed by that Dynasty Pool and Spa commercial that we caught him yawning coming back from the break. Are you okay, John? You need a little nappy?
No, I'm fine. Thanks.
All righty. Caleb, Calhoun, let's dive into this. It is, you guys enjoy this way too much. I think that coaches are great leaders of men. You two think they're just a bunch of buffoons running into each other. It's saddening to me, but that's where your mindset is going into that. So it's our football IQ, and it's brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Last look, we saved the best for last. Caleb, who you got up first? And then we will agree or disagree with one of the many drops that we have on our board. If I agree, hey now, that guy was a total imbecile, or
that's crazy,
or he's just kind of dumb, or
you suck, yeah, jackass.
And maybe the ultimate will save.
You're like, that is total bullshit.
Maybe we'll just go to that one because Peyton Manning saying the BS word is great. All right, Caleb, what do you got?
All right, so I'm breaking my own rule here because this is a coach who I don't know if this decision cost him the game because they were probably going to lose anyway, but it was still so incredibly dumb that I have to put Hugh Freeze on my list, and not just for sticking with Peyton Thorne way longer than he should have at quarterback.
Did he forget so he didn't forget a burner phone again, did he?
No, he kept his girls a little bit quieter than Mike Price did. We can at least say that. But John, did you see this over the weekend? Auburn was down 17-7. They had just run a third down play, and the 2-minute warning was about to hit. Hugh Freeze decided to burn a timeout before the 2-minute warning. At which point, Auburn, when they punted, when Vanderbilt punted the ball, the clock stopped again for the 2-minute warning. So you wasted a chance at clock stoppage and burned a timeout. And he comes back in the press and was like, yeah, I guess I shouldn't have done that in his press conference.
You suck, yeah, jackass.
John, thoughts on Hugh Freeze this year? Not the best year.
Yeah, I mean, it's as though he's coaching to get a buyout.
Pastor Hugh following money? That's not what Jesus would do.
Actually, some of these big churches, it might be. All right, Caleb, who's next?
All right, so next, I got to throw James Franklin in there. And, James Franklin is the coach, guys, that actually believe does all the things right before game day. But on game day, he just makes some baffling decisions. And that time, when Penn State got stopped on the 4 downs inside the 5-yard line, that play calling was just some of the worst play calling. Who were you fooling by lining an offensive lineman up at wide receiver and sitting him in motion? And they did it 3 times in a row. Just for up the middle run plays. Who are you fooling? That's some of the worst play calling I've ever seen.
I agree with you. I think James Franklin's a terrific coach. I still go back to what he accomplished at Vanderbilt. It was unheard of. And he's done a nice job at Penn State. However, in these kind of games, it does come out. He just doesn't add anything. He doesn't give his team anything extra, and you need something extra when you're playing against Ohio State, a team with that kind of talent. So
you suck.
Yeah, I guess so.
Is that the play where they ran the offensive lineman in motion at one point?
They did it 3 straight times, yes.
But once he was just in the backfield, I think. But to run him in motion once or twice, I have to be honest. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And they thought what is Ohio State going to be like? Oh, they got an offensive lineman out there. We better go guard.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, John, he's not a receiving threat. So what's he even doing?
No. Are you worried about the jet sweep?
Well, yes. he's still running. He's still running.
There he goes.
Running. I will say this. One of the plays in particular, they brought him in motion, and he wasn't even the lead blocker. He was the backside blocker, which is just as bad of a play design as you could possibly have. The one thing the guy does well is going to block for you, and you take that out of the equation. All right, Caleb, let's get to the remainder of our football IQ segment. Last look brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
is to visit cctis.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn and Eye Care Optical at cctis.com, simply the best.
What's next, Caleb Calhoun?
All right. I am going back to old reliable on this list, Lincoln Riley, who was just a returning champion. He just keeps making this list, guys. But
we could call this the Lincoln Riley list.
this year we could. USC lost to Washington 26-21, and I it's for the same reason I keep putting Lincoln Riley on this list, abandoning the run game. Washington had the worst rush defense in the Big Ten. USC was averaging 6 yards a carry. Lincoln Riley decides in a game that was in the 20s, it'd be real good if I threw it 50 times with my quarterback who has been erratic all year. Yeah, he threw it 50 times and ran it 22.
That's crazy. Yeah, he was still throwing. Yeah, I'm sorry, I stepped on his. He was still throwing after the game too. He was throwing his quarterback under the bus.
He was. He did. I saw that.
He's going to be throwing from the tarmac, Lane Kiffin style, if he's not careful. Who's next?
All right, couple more.
Yeah, he is. You better be glad. Better be.
I mean, for real, what is his record in the last 15 games? It's 7-8 or something. It's horrible. I mean, who's having the worst season? Is it Florida State or Mike Norvell, or is it Lincoln Riley?
Ooh, who gets fired first? That's a good
Florida
question.
State's talent drop. I don't think Southern Cal's talent is that bad. I put most of this on Lincoln Riley, and he's talking about how his quarterback, Lincoln Riley's supposed to be this quarterback guru. So why does Moss keep getting worse?
I don't know.
I agree. I totally agree. So the last couple of ones are some management issues that just drive me crazy. So Brent Pry for Virginia Tech, the classic case of doing things the right way off the field, and then in the game you just mismanage things so badly that it negates the good work you've done off the field, because Virginia Tech is 5-4 right now, and if Brent Pry had a brain, they'd be 8-1. So Brent Pry against Syracuse over the weekend. He's the one, John, he's the one who took a timeout with 30 seconds left to kick a field goal at the end of the half when he could have run it down to 1 second. That's how his brain works. Okay, so in this game, Virginia Tech has a chance to upset Syracuse. They get the ball in a shootout at the end, game tied at 31 on the 29. It's on their own 29-yard line. There's 30 seconds left. He has all 3 timeouts. He's on the road. He plays for overtime. Takes one knee and tries to go to overtime. And loses.
Well, see, you say, yeah, that's crazy, but it's as though from what you say, the way you depict him, I mean, you say he does a nice job till he gets to the game. Well, the game's no big deal, right? I mean, what's a Saturday in the fall? He does great. No, but maybe he doesn't need a completely different brain. Maybe he just needs a part of his brain that handles game day decisions. Does a part of your brain deal with that so they can have that part replaced? And then he'd be 8-1 and in the running for the playoffs.
Just hire a common sense
angry.
coach. My question is, how come these coaches don't just hire a common sense staff member? You're allowed to hire a bunch of off-field staff members. Hire one that just tells you that ain't smart right there. Do this instead. Just hire one in the press box.
Because part of their brain doesn't work right. What?
Yes. Was the lobotomy. Chattanooga Mortgage, congratulations. Your home search just got easier. They helped me with my credit. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat Mortgage with 2 T's. Chatmortgage with 2 T's.com. Caleb, wrap us up on coaching IQ.
Lastly, we talk about one of the worst falls from grace, from going to the national title and losing to Georgia by 60-something points, and now he's on the hot seat, and that is Sonny Dykes at TCU. TCU lost to Baylor over the weekend. Guys, I know y'all think I hate punting a lot, but I really hate it in this situation. It's 7 minutes left in the game, a tie game at 27. TCU has it 4th and 2 on the Baylor 46. They punt it. You don't punt in that situation. You got to try to go for it. I'm sorry. And that's Baylor territory. That's your rule, right, Dave? And
yeah, I'm cool with that. I disagree with some of your analytics decisions, but I'll go with that, and I will go ahead and tell Sonny Dykes that
you suck.
Hey, and I'm going to go one further, if I may. What about James Franklin arguing with a fan after the game? To me, that's dumber than all. And I know he was going with football decisions, but that was incredibly dumb. And then trying to get that guy banned from the stadium for using what? I imagine just profanity. I mean, there are some things you could say, like a racial slur or something that might be over the top, but he tried to he goes, "What's your name? What's your name?" So they could get him banned from the stadium.
Like he thought the guy was going to give him his name.
I know. Yeah. Do you need my social as well?
James.
Maybe if he was a former coach, if he were a former coach, maybe he would have given him his name.
Caleb brought up something good. What if he just said, "I'm your nephew," and you still?
You suck, you jackass.
What? Well, you know what it reminds coaches. It always speaks to a level of coaches that, like the type of coaches that can't handle pressure that do that. John, do you remember when Oklahoma beat Tennessee in Knoxville in 2015, and Butch Jones went off on Eric Stryker for celebrating at the end of the game? Oklahoma linebacker, what are you doing going off on the opposing team's player for how they celebrate for beating you? How about you worry about your own team?
Well, that's a whole show, not a show. That's a series of shows. Why don't we do that in the off season? Why don't we do that? Since Caleb likes to point out coaching frailties, why don't we do a special look back, a throwback show, and we go back and we analyze like Jeremy Pruitt for a show. We analyze Butch Jones for 2 shows. I think it would be entertaining.
I need 7 for Butch Jones.
Now, we've got Celebrate 98. We also have Caleb's long form video series, which is going to start growing again in the off season. So we could just do a series called Coaching Stupidity.
How about you guys?
Yeah.
John, I've never gotten your thought. I never got your thoughts on this. I joke with Dave and Jimmy all the time, but I've watched a documentary on that SEC championship game 2001, and Jimmy Hyams was on it. And one of the, you heard the coaches, Nick Saban and Tennessee coaches come in and say, well, they just weren't prepared for the quarterback draw when Matt Malk came in and instead of Rohan Davey. And Jimmy comes in and he's like, it's a quarterback draw. What do you have to prepare for?
John, I know you have to run. Get out of here, buddy. We appreciate you. Anything in closing?
No, but the quarterback draw, it's not an exotic play. And the fact that LSU did it over and over and over.
Yeah.
It's a mystery.
It's the repetition that got him. Thank you, John.
See you
John
guys.
Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. I also remind you that you need to check out my friends at Asia Cafe. Go to asiacafe.org. They've got the 6-to-1 Brazilian coffee, Energy Booster Premix Instant White Coffee. It is phenomenal. And treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. 5 locations to choose from. asiacafe.org, asiacafe.org. So, Caleb, I will ask you this. Where do you think Tennessee will be picked in the college football ranking? And that is brought to you by our good friends at TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TristarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Caleb, I believe most people believe that it'll be around 8. That's what most of the ESPN voters in the story had from them. I've also heard 9th. I've heard 7th. they'll do something funky. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, they'll do something funky. And I'm going to say that Tennessee is either 11th or 6th. So I'm picking two numbers.
Wow. Okay. That's a huge range. I'm going to go Tennessee is going to be 8th. I see they're going to have Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, Miami, Texas, Penn State. And even though I disagree with this, I think they're going to have BYU ahead of Tennessee just because BYU doesn't have a loss. But I do think they'll put Tennessee ahead of Indiana, even though Indiana is undefeated because Indiana's schedule has been so god-awful.
Yeah, and I'm not giving a range. I'm just saying I think they do something odd, which means 6th or 11th. Not in between. I just think they'll do something strange to stand out.
Well, the good news with Tennessee, if they're at 8, with what I'm having them doing, Oregon, Ohio, there would be the top 4 conference champions would all be ahead of them, which would be Oregon, Georgia, Miami, and BYU in this scenario. So Tennessee would be actually locked in as the 8th seed in the playoff in that scenario, which would mean a home playoff game.
Yep. Ashley asked, does anyone know all that drama at the Florida-Georgia game started over probably alcohol? He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Weekdays with you at 10 a.m. Hit like and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. We continue to grow. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney.